Hey everyone, my name's Anthony Natal. I go by Tony. I'm a seventh grade social studies teacher at Mechanicsburg Middle School, as well as a team leader. I've been teaching there since 2017. It's my eighth year overall teaching. Focused very much on civic online reasoning skills and growth mindset in my classroom at this time. I am pursuing my master's in assessment curriculum and technology with a STEM concentration. In the future, I'd like to become an instructional coach or possibly a principal. Above anything else, I enjoy being out and being active in nature. This past summer, I took a cross-country trip so that I could hike in the Grand Canyon, and you can see a little more about myself at the bottom. So how do students learn science? In the past, we often, at least when I was in school, it was a lot of textbook learning, rote memorization of different facts and concepts. I remember I had a teacher in biology where if you wrote down 100 definitions of words, you got like a full letter grade markup for the marking period. So I did that every marking period to guarantee an A or a B at least. And but no real learning was occurring in that setting. And then we would have these Friday labs or week-long labs that were independent of the regular learning. It wasn't driving the learning, and so it wasn't connected together. One thing I really like about Mechanicsburg Middle School is they have, just in the past year or two, shifted their curriculum across the secondary, at least, I assume at elementary as well, for science instruction. And they have moved to this inquiry-based learning, and they have performance tasks that are based on exploration of phenomena and can the students explain it. They scaffold it by supplying them with different resources, and then the students have to be able to pull all this information together and supply a reason for why the phenomena is occurring. This is in line with the American Association for the Advancement of Science guidelines that include an emphasis on students developing a familiarity with the discipline's concepts, theories, and models, and understanding how knowledge is generated, not just what knowledge is generated, and an ability to use those understandings to engage in new inquiry. We call that at Mechanicsburg transfer, and all of our curriculums have been rewritten to focus on transfer. So whether you're in science, math, English, or history, you hear similar things like support your claim with evidence. And so students are beginning to see that and beginning to understand how these different concepts are interlinked. In the past, we had been in our own silos. You can see that the emphasis now is to have students approach these topics in new ways that support students' abilities to learn new concepts and theories, experience the process of inquiry, be able to generate their models, use tools, collaborate together in a group. How often do you at work do something entirely on your own? You are always working in a group. Reflect metacognitively on your own thinking and then participate in new inquiry. So with respect to science, what are the barriers to learning? And many of those barriers for students are their preconceived or preconceptions that are errant. And they're based on its own internal logic. So it's useful in many contexts, which can make it very deceptive and very seductive for a student to want to adhere to that learning and not abandon this misconception that they hold. But their reasoning is contrary to scientific reasoning. For example, students are always amazed as we study history, we get to Newton and physics, when I tell them that a bowling ball and a feather would drop at the same rate in a vacuum. And they just cannot believe it until I show them a video. For them, the fact that there's air should keep the feather floating up. The absence of air, still the bowling ball's heavier, so it should just fall way faster. They just can't fathom it. So it's a preconception that's been useful for most of their life, but isn't true for scientific reasoning. What is needed in science is conceptual change, designing your curriculum and your lessons around knowing what misconceptions students have or exploring what their misconceptions are, and then adjusting your instruction and designing your instruction to purposely change these misconceptions. and then be able to have them apply and transfer that learning into new situations. So the whole goal is to replace these conceptions and then have them transfer the learning. So it's a shift from procedures and rote memorization to inquiry-based learning, and I would say for our school district, transfer. So some ways that my classroom adheres to the tenets of science learning described in the module. I have 2 courses that one of them I used to teach, and now I only teach Western Heritage. But in the past, I taught a course called Design for Change, and it was a required course, 8th graders, non-credit awarding. You can see the requirements there. So it was highly based on their own internal motivation. There's no grade really. It's pass fail. It's really hard to fail. And it gets close to the curriculum mentioned in these readings, but it was not designed solely around inquiry. Rather, we tried to design challenges that students could grapple in the classroom, so small, related to UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, these goals are global goals set to be, there was a goal for 2020, there's another goal for 2030 for the world to achieve. And some of these goals have achieved amazing things, lifting like 50% of people out of poverty over the course of one of the goals. That may have been in a specific area, and I'm not sure the exact percentage, but you get the idea, like a large number of people, thanks to these goals. Some of the goals can include things like solar power, like our sustainable power. And so we would have students design solar ovens using pizza boxes and crackers, and they would be able to make s'mores at the end. So these design challenges were related to the goal, but they didn't drive the learning. And they were a chance, though, for students to reflect on the learning afterwards. We would have them write and talk about the different topics, why they were important to them, what they might be interested in learning more about, how it might relate to their life in the future, would they want to learn more about it, etc. And then also there was times where the students could, with sustainable power, sustainable energy, they might focus on solar power, or they might focus on hydroelectric power and might want to learn more about that, and there would be opportunities for that throughout the course. Western Heritage, the course I primarily teach, has some opportunities for inquiry every unit, such as we have a Roman iSearch project where students create a website after exploring 2 burning questions on topics of interest to them related to ancient Rome. We have other opportunities like that, such as creating podcasts on the era of expansion and colonization. And we have mock trials at the end of the unit coming up. So there's many different events that go on where they have an opportunity for inquiry. I wouldn't say that every unit or every lesson is designed around inquiry, but we often pose philosophical big questions for debate and inquiry that occur throughout a whole unit or even the year, such as, does might make right? Does great responsibility come with great power? Does power corrupt? Absolutely, and such things. Does absolute power corrupt? Absolutely. We conduct historical investigations into things like the disappearance of the colonists at Roanoke. I allow them to paint murals during the Renaissance, and they write about how it relates to the Renaissance. So there's artistic expression, reflection, and metacognition there. We incorporate reflection into our performance tasks recently, where students would circle on a survey or place an X on a survey, a continuum rather, of where they felt how much they had mastered the concept of the transfer goal. And then that allowed us to adjust instruction the next day by providing more direct assistance to the 6 or 7 students that were struggling with the concept in each class out of, I would say 6 or 7, 2 or 3 really struggling, and the other 3 or 4 just needed a little bit of a help, and then they got it. And so that was really a great realization for us this year, that adding that reflection piece and then adjusting instruction with it. We also research and debate historical figures and events, and this allows for some open inquiry and exploration and students finding their own sources to support their arguments. This is after I've taught them how to find credible sources. We also allow our instruction to shift, and our school, again, is focused on transfer goals and historical thinking skills, like providing evidence for claims, knowing how to find credible evidence, being able to argue and debate civilly in a global community. My STEM perspective, I think the best STEM occurs when it's integrated across disciplines. It's integrated into your class, and it's integrated through the other classes as well. So other subject areas as well, I mean. So like I said, at our school, there are certain transfer goals where the transfer goal is virtually the same in each subject, but what evidence looks like when I say support your argument with evidence, that looks different in history. That looks like multiple sources from multiple perspectives, from multiple primary and secondary if possible. Whereas in science, it might be evidence from multiple experiments. Whereas in math, it might be proofs and formulas. So the students get used to being asked to do certain tasks across multiple disciplines. And I find that to work really well at our school, be really empowering. And it's just something that the process has started. So 5 years from now, it'll be really exciting to see what learning looks like in the school.